Welcome back, guys, to the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve. For last episode, our second day of trial began with Enoch Drebber called to the stand, declaring the kinesis machine to be the real deal in an obvious bid to continue to point the finger at our defendant, shutting down the premise of a body double as he gave his first testimony. Having declared that the birdcage holding the victim had fallen bottom first in counter to one of Drebber's statements, we have followed this train of thought to declare that one cage fell within the tower-like experimentation stage through a metal grill in its floor, with another one falling as witness from the sky. However, the prosecution is countered by declaring that Enoch has a lack of motive for committing the crime, with a contract clause requiring Asman to be alive to reap the benefit in the deal made for him to build the machine, as we now continue our defense. Get to the point. The stage demonstration was constructed and set up in its entirety by you, Mr. Drebber. Therefore, it's inconceivable that you had no hand in the events that transpired. So if circumstances mean it's impossible that you could have carried out the crime yourself, it points to the fact that someone else was involved.
Someone else? Counsel, are you suggesting...
Yes, my lord. Mr. Drebber had an accomplice.
Objection!
An accomplice now? Well then, I presume you're prepared for what's to come. Now that you're accusing not only this witness, but someone else of the most serious of crimes. If these accusations turn out to be false, then make no mistake. The prosecution will demand an equally serious punishment for your slander.
Well, counsel, do you intend to pursue this court and formally accuse another party of involvement in this matter?
What do I do here? At the moment, this is little more than a hunch on my part. I don't know for sure if Drebber had an accomplice or even if he really is the culprit here. One way or another, though, I have to make my position clear. As a lawyer. So what's my stance going to be? Did Drebber have an accomplice or not? I mean... It's not like I really... Right, there are some obviously, like, weird bits going on with the details of stuff here, there, and everywhere. Nothing really in that, but it's more about the killer's autopsy report, which of course we can link to someone having a different name, and that person, the professor, not even being alive at the time. So that brings someone into this that isn't actually remotely part of the case. Now, we know that's generally not a true thing, right? We know that the professor itself, everything surrounding it, is intrinsically involved in this case. For someone else's possible name as a coroner to be there in all of this means that she has to be part of this somehow. So the question is, do we or don't we? Is this the point in time where we try to randomly bring someone in just based on the drip drop of small bits of information here and there? The defense is ready to name Mr. Drebber's accomplice. Sounds so dumb. Somehow the two bird cages must have been switched. Everything points to that. Yet according to the coroner's report, that's not a possibility. But that inconsistency itself is a clue.
Counsel.
My lord.
You have received a stark warning already, if you are nevertheless determined. And I must now ask you to identify this alleged accomplice by name. So, your answer, please. Who do you claim to have been Mr. Drebber's accomplice?
Well, I've got to go with it now, especially as basically the game had a line straight afterwards that said, yeah, you're right.
Take that!
This is time. The name of the person in question is... What's wrong, my Nipponese friend? Surely fear doesn't bind your tongue now. It's a little late for that. Of course I'm afraid. After all, naming her in this capacity is definitely going to make waves. a lot of waves. I could very well turn every single person in this courtroom against me. I'm sure it'll be alright, Mr. Naruhodo. Thank you, Miss Susato. The enemy always appears larger than life, but you'll appear exactly the same to the enemy. Alright then. Here goes. You've kept us waiting long enough. Your answer, Counsel. Now. The person who colluded with Mr. Drebber in order to carry out this wicked crime is Scotland Yard's coroner, Dr. Courtney Sive.
What? What the blazes are you talking about, Dr. Sive?
The head of the forensic investigations team and the coroner who conducted the autopsy on the victim. We know there were 2 bird cages, so who could have carried out the switch to complete the illusion? The accident happened in front of a huge crowd of spectators and the area was immediately sealed off. Then everyone, police officers included, were banished to make way for the forensic investigation team. When else could the switch have occurred? It can only have been in that team's presence. It's essential that the court determines exactly what happened following the incident. The defense demands that Dr. Sive be summoned to the witness stand at once to testify.
You've got a nerve, lad! Standing up, yeah? Dragging the yard's name through the mud?
I didn't mean to...
I know the woman very well. There's no better dead room worker out there. How dare you call her a criminal?
Dead room? My learned friend's imagination appears to be wilder than the East End at night. But the recklessness of your accusation aside, there's another grave problem with your argument. One which the prosecution demands you address at once. A grave problem? Oh my word! Who do you claim acted as the victim's doppelganger? What?
Certainly if the birdcage containing the body of the victim was exchanged for another, that cage must also have contained a body.
And yet, no missing persons or accidental deaths of anyone even remotely resembling the victim have been reported. Which means there was no one, dead or alive, who could have fulfilled the role of a body double for Mr. Asman. That's true. If my argument is that there were 2 bird cages, then there must have also been one person inside of each. But I don't know if I've got an answer to this yet, have I? What can I do to reveal how this body double stunt was achieved? Could it be very much the waxwork head? Could it just simply be? Of course, it was a waxwork. A body was needed. A body is different, but then they'd have had to make a head that was exactly right, or maybe something weird is afoot here. Very well. The defense will address my learned friend's concerns by presenting evidence that reveals the true nature of Mr. Asman's body double.
Oh, good gracious! Evidence? I do hope this isn't filibustering, Counsel. The court's expecting a name.
If you think you have relevant evidence, present it now. The body double and the birdcage were hiding inside the balloon that was floating above the stage, which means that any witnesses would only have seen them from 60 feet away. So who was it that appeared out of that explosion some 18 meters above the spectators? Aha! The body double inside the second birdcage was... He's only gonna go and do it. Take that! It was the professor. We know that the victim, Mr. Asman, was in the birdcage that was situated inside the kinesis machine on stage, and therefore he couldn't have been inside the second birdcage. Instead, that contained something else. What's being described as a body double, which is what fell from the sky and crashed into the Crystal Tower.
Yes, Counsel. According to your somewhat elaborate version of events.
And that body double inside the second birdcage was in fact... It's alright, Mr. Naruhodo. You're ready for this. Just steel yourself and come out with it. Thank you, Miss Susato. I needed that. As I was saying, the body double inside the second birdcage was As unbelievable as it may seem, that thing there, why is it here?
Objection!
Open your eyes and look into mine, my Nipponese friend. Now tell me, what are you playing at? Stand firm now, Ryunosuke. This is the time to show your Japanese spirit. As the court will observe, this is a waxwork model. A model, in fact, of an infamous London murderer from 10 years ago, the Professor.
Objection!
Started by indicting the leader of the forensic investigation team as an accomplice in this crime. And now you've moved on to indicting waxworks? Yes, that's about the size of it. But why? And why this waxwork? It looks nothing like the victim. In fact, you could hardly resemble him less. What possible justification can you give? If you want to know why, ask Mr. Drebber. What? Just days before Professor Hairbrain performed his public demonstration, Mr. Drebber abducted this model from Madame Tuspel's.
Did you say abducted?
And 2 days after the incident at the Great Exhibition, he returned it to the museum.
Then the timing. Is this true, Mr. Drebber?
At first, I couldn't see why Mr. Drebber would have stolen the waxwork and then given it back again. But now the reason is clear. He took it so that he could put it inside the second birdcage as a body double for Mr. Asman.
Objection!
Are you hearing this, ladies and gentlemen of the jury? Are you hearing the defense's astonishing proposal? That the witness fabricated this vast machine with the intention of deceiving some wretched scientist. That he did so in collusion with the country's finest coroner on a public stage in front of a vast audience. And that, to effect the deception, he used a waxwork model that in no way resembles the victim. Are we really to believe this far-fetched tale? What you decide.
Objection!
Wait! Yes, if you put it like that, of course it sounds implausible. My lord, I need to speak, if you please.
Go ahead, Mr. Foreman.
Myself and my colleagues have reached an agreement.
Very good. In that case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will state your leanings for the court to hear now.
Guilty!
Guilty.
Guilty! Guilty!
Guilty!
Kill me!
Joy!
So, as indicated by the foreman, the jury has reached a consensus.
I knew that was going to happen. We shall get through this, Mr. Naruhodo, as we always do. And uncover some new truths along the way, I'm quite sure. Yes, I agree. I'm going to have to appeal to the jurors as usual and see if I can persuade them to change their minds.
A defense will now embark on a summation examination. Are you and your fellows ready to proceed, Mr. Foreman?
We are, my lord.
Very well. In that case, I ask you now to state clearly for all present to hear the grounds on which each of you has decided that a defendant is guilty of the crime of which he is charged.
It's summation examination time!
I've known that woman for years. She'd never been an accomplice to anything. It's utter nonsense to think those two would ever be conniving with one another.
Oh dear, this is most troubling. But surely the waxwork the man stole has nothing to do with the coroner, is it? I have had my own problems with members of the police. I do not trust them much.
I see no rigorous proof that this waxwork was ever inside the birdcage. It's conjecture.
Using someone without raw evidences? He's not a proper job, is he? I won't have it.
Somewhat unsurprisingly, it seems the introduction of this waxwork model to the proceedings has polarized opinion. Given that his face is obscured and his build in no way resembles that of the victim, I can only applaud my learned friend's temerity as suggesting it is Mr. Asman's body double.
Yes, the applause is deafening. And yes, I know it seems extraordinary. But that's the point.
That's why I have a strong feeling it's actually a greater clue than anyone yet realizes.
What are you thinking, Mr. Naruhodo?
I can't explain why at the moment, but I feel as though there's a specific reason why it was used. Why it had to be this model.
Really? A reason why nothing else would do, you mean?
Yes, and I'm convinced it's something far more significant than whether or not the model looked like the victim.
Well, if that's the case, we must prevent the trial from ending prematurely at all costs.
Yes, agreed. I have to find a way out of this. If you are ready, Counsel, you may proceed with the summation examination.
Yes, my lord.
Let's do this. I've known that woman for years. She'd never been accomplice to anything. Why are you going first?
Hold it!
The order of things seems to have changed around here for some reason. I'm a copper, lad. It's a copper's discretion to bend the rules sometimes when needs must. What's wrong with that? Where do I start? I've been working in the yard for 40-odd years. That's even more than I thought. We've only had a metropolitan police service in town for 70 years, you know. Of course, times have changed. The public didn't trust coppers back when I started. It was rough. We had to fight crime. We had to fight to win the public's trust as well. And win we did. Forensic science was in its infancy too, even more than it is now. She spearheaded the revolution. Dr. Sive, you mean? That's right. About 10 years ago now it was, when I was still a youngish bobby on the beat. That's when she started making a name for herself as a top-class coroner. And now look her, head of the forensic investigation team, and a woman no less. Well, you won't hear me complain. It's what we all dreamt of back then, I tell ya.
Could you tell me about holding that gun in the air?
We were all out to uphold justice, lad. Full of him we were, full of him. That's coming across loud and clear. I'm already pretty sure who to go to trigger the old man a little bit there. It's utter nonsense to think those two would even be, or ever be, conniving with one another.
Hold it!
But we're only just starting to understand this case. What are you reading there, sir? The man behind those murders on Solar Pond Street was caught in 2 days flat. That's real policing for you. That's really not relevant to this case, is it? You're wrong there. Because it was Dr. Sive in charge of examining the bodies. And it was evidence arising from her work that led to the arrest of the scoundrel responsible. Oh. That's right. Oh, that woman is at the forefront of this country's fight against crime. The idea that she's somehow involved in this murky business is a load of old tosh. I thought it was up to me to press the jurors, not the other way around.
Oh dear, this is most troubling. But surely the waxwork the man stole has nothing to do with the coroner, is it?
Hold it!
Why would you assume that?
Well, quite simply because that unsettling swindler has no relationship with the woman, does he?
True, as it stands, we don't know of any connection.
Oh gosh, but it would be delightfully romantic if they were somehow to have a mutual interest in the waxwork.
Romantic?
A woman of society such as myself views everything in terms of relationships, you know.
Well, you learn something new every day, even if you don't want to.
One might wonder about a possible relationship between the defendant and this coroner woman. Or perhaps between the defendant and the handsome prosecutor just there.
This woman may be more astute than I've been giving her credit for.
If that's the woman's stance, then perhaps demonstrating some connection between the waxwork and Dr. Sive would be enough.
Yes, I agree.
As soon as we have even a whiff of a connection, should be the first to know. I have a whiff, but I think I need a more poignant whiff. I've had my own problems with members of the police. I do not trust them much. That's not going to cause any trouble.
Hold it!
What sort of problems? Let's just say we have run into each other on numerous occasions whilst I've been performing on the street. Right, I see. Obviously, artists such as myself cannot appear on stage as we work in close proximity to our audiences. So we perform our great magic in parks, on street corners, and the like. But the police use any excuse to make our lives difficult.
Not in my day. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Do you have something to say in response to that, Mr. Ottomole?
Who are you calling a mass murderer?
Sorry, my mistake. I got confused because I heard you look like him.
I don't look anything like the man. You want to be locked up, sonny?
Thanks, Mr. Sholmes. Perhaps we could move on. I was really wondering if you had something you wanted to add in response to what juror number 3 just said. Clearly you do. Please stop doing that.
Back in my day, back in the good old days, it wasn't like this.
What was it like, sir?
We worked our fingers to the bone in the public's trust, we did. And by Jove, we earned it. People respected us back then.
Respected you?
No one would have called a coroner into question in them days. Coroner's report was the hallmark of an investigation done right. Especially when Dr. Courtney Stevens put her name to it. She was the best of the best, and the apple of the force's eyes.
Hold on a minute. What are you talking about? Who's Courtney Stevens?
Sorry, got a bit carried away there.
Stevens is Dr. Sive's maiden name. Her maiden name? So that was before she was married.
Of course, yes, silly me. It's Sive now, isn't it?
Stevens. I'm sure I've seen that name somewhere recently.
Anyway, the point is, those were the great days of policing, not like now.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. But do you think you could change your statement to include that name?
Well, yes, I don't see why not. She was Courtney Stevens back when I knew her, of course. A legendary coroner even then.
Right. Surely the waxwork the man stole has nothing to do with the coroner, is it? Is this now when I can do it? Because we've got, like, the actual full link. We probably present this in the end, I guess? I don't know. Do we pit or present? But there is a link there between the professor, the waxwork, Courtney Sive, and more proven. Do I pit? I can't present, so I pit. Nothing to do.
Objection!
We haven't even checked the rest, though. Those two statements clearly contradict each other.
Good gracious, to whose statement you refer, counsel?
So, juror number 2. Oh gosh, me? What can I do for you? I presume that you heard what juror number 6 said in his statement. It's brought to light the maiden name of the coroner, Dr. Sive, which in turn has revealed a connection that wasn't apparent before. Well, naturally, as a woman of society, I find such connections and relationships irresistible. But, oh golly, I'm afraid I failed to see what you mean. Dr. Sive's maiden name is Stevens, and through that name, the coroner is very definitely linked to the waxwork of the killer. The defense has evidence to prove it. My goodness, evidence, you say? How utterly enthralling.
The counsel, the court cannot overlook that last remark. I very much hope there is substance to your claim.
Of course, my lord. I would ask the court to look at this. The evidence that clearly links Dr. Sive to the mass murderer known as the Professor. Wrong autopsy report. That was nearly very bad. Correct autopsy report.
Take that!
I have here a certain autopsy report from 10 years ago.
A 10-year-old autopsy report? What relevance does that have?
It is, of course, from the autopsy of the person portrayed in the waxwork, the killer known as the Professor.
The professors? But the man was a capital offender, so...
That's right. This is a certification of death that was drawn up after the convict's execution. The identity of the killer was never made public, so the report gives few details. But what's important is the name of the coroner who wrote it. Courtney Stevens. Oh my, Courtney Stevens?
Strike a light!
It appears that the professor's autopsy was conducted by Dr. Sive 10 years ago. And a few days ago, Mr. Drebber very deliberately stole the waxwork of the professor from Madame Tuspel's. A waxwork that doesn't in fact resemble the victim, Mr. Asman, at all. And do you suppose there's some unsavory relationship between those events? Absolutely, I'm sure of it. There's no doubt in my mind that the professor case is at the heart of a link that we have yet to uncover. Between Dr. Courtney Sive and Mr. Enoch Drebber. Hidden links, mysterious connections, secret relationships. This is all most extraordinary. We're surely obliged now to explore this further.
We piqued your interest. Quite right. Can't let this trial come to an end now. Not while there's this cloud of suspicion hanging over the yard's best coroner. I wasn't like this in my day, but we're still here to uphold justice in the end.
It's the professor. That's what links that frightful swindler in the coroner. Okay, so we've got you. We kind of might need to go through you again, but I guess not. I mean, we'll go on to the next one. But, like, we actually didn't get to the end of his statement when you think about it.
I've seen no rigorous proof that this waxwork was ever inside the birdcage. It's conjecture.
I mean, this is an interesting statement to press anyway. We might learn something. But you claim the whole instantaneous kinesis demonstration was a trick.
That I did, but there's more than one way to pull a rabbit out of a hat, isn't there?
Sorry?
I grant you, given that this cage appeared from a mist explosion, there'd have been no need to use a real person. But if a waxwork had been used, the culprit could at least have had the decency to make it look like the victim.
I'm not sure exactly how much criminals are governed by decency.
The point is, if you're going to make a claim about that waxwork being inside the birdcage, you'll need to give us some evidence. Without that, it's just not science.
I suppose we should expect nothing less than a logical argument from a fellow of the Royal Society. That perhaps means his mind could be changed if we manage to present suitable evidence. Evidence that the Professor Waxwork was inside that birdcage. Can I produce that or not? I don't know. Is there something I've not examined? Is there something I've not done? Is there a mark on this thing that I have no clue about? This lock does look very strong, doesn't it? There's definitely no way you could remove the mask yourself if it was put on. What a terrible way to treat someone, even a convicted criminal. I know, it's starting to make me livid, actually. Mr. Nalahodo, please. I mean, just think about it. Imagine if you had an itch on your cheek all of a sudden. You'd be utterly helpless. Poor Alphen. Well, yes, that's true. But I'm not sure that warrants quite so much anger. Oh, right. Sorry. We just need to get this mask in presence of Balsef's axe, maybe. Then we'll be able to see the identity of Iron Mask. So it's something involving the waxwork. So it's this. A small fragment of very unusual and thick glass was found in the folds of the clothing that comes from the Crystal Tower, or appears it would come from the Crystal Tower. Actually, I have something I'd like you to see, sir.
Oh? I must warn you that I firmly believe it's only wise to trust men in white coats. Though given your jet black outfit, I don't mind admitting to a sense of trepidation here.
So you don't trust anyone in black? Looking in the mirror must be very trying. I do have some evidence that proves the waxwork was inside that birdcage. Namely...
Take that!
What's that? A piece of glass? Though it's unusually thick for glass.
It is indeed unusually thick, but we presented our next piece of evidence that will hopefully bust this guy wide open. However, we need to convince at least 2 more members of the jury at this point in time, so it'll be interesting to see which ones we actually convince. However, that will be it for yet another episode of the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve. With presenting done, we find out the conclusion of it next time. I'll see you guys then for more.
Bye-bye.